Hi, Denver Startup Week. I'm Eric Matisik, President and CEO of Highwing and co-founder of Denver Startup Week. Denver Startup Week is the largest free entrepreneurial event in the world, and it's only possible thanks to the support of our awesome sponsors. We have nearly 40 sponsor companies who contribute to make DSW a reality. Let's show our love for these companies today and all week long. Thanks to our title sponsors, the Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Zero, and our track sponsors who help make the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 and Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline and event sponsors are bringing you inspiration from around the country. Thank you to Wix, Kinzon, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. Now, let's get started.
Public Works is a Denver, Colorado-based design, fabrication, and multimedia marketing firm that allows your company to craft an authentic presence to your target audience. For the past 15 years, the Public Works media team has been telling stories with words, pictures, and films. Our unique approach to brand storytelling allows us to get strong reactions and results from our content. We work in experienced and nimble teams with our crew of producers, directors, and cinematographers that all have firsthand experience and international presence. We are fortunate to have amazing clients that allow us to get wherever we need to go with the right tools for the highest production value. Lots of people can take a pretty picture. Just look at Instagram. While we believe our images speak for themselves, what really sets us apart is our decades of experience, our network, and our ability to make shit happen when it counts. We love bringing unexpected partners together to create added value for everyone. And most of all, we love when we finish a job confident that we've not only executed, but elevated the end product, and we know that everyone involved enjoyed the process. Our company was founded on the idea that life is about learning and teaching through every experience. We apply a strict discipline of work hard, play hard, and make great fucking work. We amplify awesome. We surround ourselves with the best and feed off of infectious innovation, ideas, collaboration, and building long-term friendships and partnerships. Contact us anytime for a meeting at our office, golf course, or on the chairlift.
Over to you, Castle. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Denver Startup Week, Day 2, Tuesday. I'm one of the design track chairs now for 9 years, and I'm really excited to introduce this session because Ari Weismann, who's doing intro to UX, the UX design process, I think he's been doing this session for like 5 years. And it's become kind of a foundation of our track. He can correct me if it's been more or less, but I've never met Ari. So we've always had a virtual relationship. And I just saw him today for the first time, I think, virtually, that is. So a few housekeeping things. Thank you for joining the first ever virtual Denver Startup Week. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we're more powerful when we come together as a community to share ideas and help make each other better. And here we are virtually showing the world what Denver is made of. It's really cool because Denver Startup Week is virtual this time. And that makes it global and international. And so you can share this, people can watch it from anywhere. So share with your friends, use hashtag #DenStartupWeek, hashtag designer track for us. One important thing at Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, and any combination of those identities. So this is a safe place, and let us know if you don't feel that it's a safe space. There's something here for everyone. Up next on the designer track, just so you know, 10 a.m. we have a session, commercial real estate placemaking and the new gig economy, that Brian Corrigan has put together. What else? And then we have our clubhouse every night with DJ sets and sessions that starts at 5 o'clock. So be sure to check that out. So now I'll turn it over to Ari. I think that's it. Okay. Hello. Okay, bye.
Cool. Thanks, Castle. I appreciate the kind words, and I'm excited to be here. So let me get my screen share going. I think I figured this out. Okay. You should be seeing the presentation here. Welcome to another amazing Denver Startup Week. I'm totally stoked to be participating again and part of, I guess, a really, really great experience for me as a presenter, but also I think a really great thing for the city of Denver. As part of that, you should know I tell terrible jokes, so be prepared. Here comes the first one. Why did the coffee go to the police? It got mugged. I know. See, if we were all sitting in a room together, you would hear that everyone is laughing just as hard as you are right now. And unfortunately, we have to be separated. But I'll tell you another one, just to get everyone in the mood. What do you get from a pampered cow? Spoiled milk. Wah, wah. All right, let's get rolling. Welcome to the UX design process. Where to start with UX? Thank you for joining us at the 9th Annual Denver Startup Week. I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm going to tell you a bit about what is UX, talk about the UX design process, how to measure it, and then really what's the point? Why do we do it to begin with? And at the end, we'll have a Q&A. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a Q&A button. My colleague, Jana, is going to be looking at the questions. She may be answering a few as we go, but when we have time at the end, she and I will do a bit of Q&A with the questions that you've put in there. Let's get rolling. So my name is Ari. I'm the director of UX at a company called Crownpeak. We make software for enterprise marketing companies, enterprise marketing teams. So we make a content management system. We make a quality management tool. We make tools to help organizations with their privacy needs. I've been UXing stuff for about 15 years. Spent the majority of my time as a consultant working with a lot of big brands and recently moved in-house. And as I mentioned, I am excited to be here. And I'm really excited to talk about UX. I'm passionate about this topic, and I think you too can be great at UX and maybe take a couple of nuggets back with you to your job or to whatever it is that you want to UX. So what is it? What are we here to talk about? What is UX? And you might have heard it from a few different names. You might have heard of user-centered design or user experience or usability or service design or customer experience or human factors. It's exhausting. What are they all? What are we talking about? I think there's a great quote from the Design Council. The central premise of user-centered design is that the best designed products and services result from understanding the needs of the people who will use them. Right? That I think is so key, right? It's user experience. And I think that's one of the keys between just design and UX is understanding the needs of the people who use them. And how do you do that? You talk to them. Right? You have to engage with people to understand their needs and to understand how to best serve them. It's also the design of anything independent of medium or across device with human experience as an explicit outcome and human engagement as an explicit goal. And what I love about this is that the key here is independent of medium. I can create an excellent experience in a hospital or a museum. I can create an excellent experience on a UI of a gas station pump, right? Or at a kiosk in a restaurant, just as, right? And use that same process just like I can on my laptop or on my watch or on a phone. User experience design is about solving problems for people, right? It's not about the medium you're solving it on. It's about a process that allows you to create great solutions for people. It's not just about the UI. So let's take it back. a ways, maybe 30 years, 40 years, to the beginning of computers, to really understand what we're talking about with UX and what is user experience. When we started with user experience, when we started with machines, right, we're going to focus mostly on digital, on UI for this talk, but you can realize that what we're talking about can be applied outside of just UI. So when we started building things, we made computers, and we had punch cards going in and out, and they worked. And that was amazing, right? It was great. It was functional. And slowly but surely, it worked the same every time, and it was reliable, and that was great, right? And then we had things like command line interfaces like DOS, where you had to type things in, but you had to know the commands to make it work. And people who were expert at those systems were able to use them effectively. But a lot of us were left out in the cold. And then we had this graphical user interface that folks like you and I could go into, and we could use a mouse to click on things, and it was usable, right? And people could open folders, and they could open files. And maybe there's still a struggle, but it was usable. Fast forward to now, right? That's table stakes. If your tool, if the experience you're building, people struggle to use it, right? It's not usable. You're going to be run out of the market pretty quickly. There's so much competition certainly in digital tools today that if you're not making the table stakes of your thing as usable, right, what are you doing? But that's not user experience, right? That's usability. That's what we used to talk about. Usability is still important because it gets you to that threshold. But when we're talking about user experience, we're talking about convenient. We're talking about pleasurable. We're talking about meaningful. And what are those? How do you do that? It's really hard to be meaningful. I can't say that every app I've worked on has been meaningful, right? And what is meaningful? Like, is iTunes meaningful for someone who loves music? Is Airbnb really meaningful for someone who loves to go on vacation? Is Flickr really meaningful or pleasurable for someone who loves photos or someone who wants to share their photos, right? Just like maybe, Google Photos is trying to create that experience. And what is the meaning for Airbnb? It's not that their interface is meaningful. It means that I'm allowed to have a really great experience after I use their interface. The meaning is me going on vacation, not that I love the way their buttons look. As you strive to create great experiences, right? As you strive to make the things you're working on better, don't aim for usable, aim for meaningful. Figure out, maybe it's just a small part of the thing you're doing, and maybe it's not part of the UI that you're creating, maybe it's the experience you're enabling. But what can you do that creates a meaningful experience, a pleasurable experience for your user, for your customer? When we talk about user experience, that's what I mean. That's what I'm aiming for, the pinnacle. And I recognize it's hard, but that's what you should be gunning for. That's what you should be going for. Yep. I want to talk a little about what UX is not, as well as what we talk about what UX is. UX is not just make it pretty. It hurts my heart when I hear it, and I love this quote. Every time someone asks a designer, just make it look pretty, a baby kitten dies. A little piece of me dies too. If everything we've just talked about in the past 7 minutes, right? We're talking about understanding users. We're talking about independent of meeting, creating a meaningful experience. It is so far beyond just make it pretty. And it's really easy, right, to say, oh, let's create a great user experience, but let's just do a small bit, right? And then maybe, we can come back to it. Or, we don't really have time, so let's just make it pretty for now. Right? I think you can all, right, think about, right, and understand what's going to be the impact of that. You're going to have a very pretty UI that does not satisfy your users, does not satisfy their needs, does not allow them to accomplish your goals, and it's going to impact your business. Design is not just what it looks like. Design is how it works. Right? Design is how it feels. So I want to talk about an example that hopefully all of you recognize. And I actually was looking, just yesterday I saw an article that I think this episode was created in 1991. Which also makes me sad because that feels like a long time ago. But for those of you who don't know, Homer met his long lost brother Herb, who was a famous and rich car manufacturer. Herb was struggling with the next best idea, and he said, Homer, you're the everyman. I want you to design a car. And he turned to his designers and he turned to his engineers and say, everything this man says, everything Homer says, I want you to build. We want to give the customers what they want. right? And so Homer went to work and he designed a car that had 2 bubble domes, one in front and one in the back for the kids. Had optional restraints and muzzles for the kids. There were 3 horns, one that played La Cucaracha. There's a gigantic cup holder for a squishy, shag carpeting, and you can see on the front there's a metal bowler hood ornament. And I think the car cost a couple of $100,000. And obviously it was a bomb, right? And it wiped out the whole company in her butt. What happened, right? They talked to the customer and they gave the customer what they wanted. Homer got everything he wanted. Why were they not successful? I think often there's this conception that user experiences, let's get a focus group together and let's everything someone says, like, I want it red, let's make it red, right? I want a massive cup holder, let's give it to them. And that's not what we're talking about, right? User experience design is not give customers what they ask for. User experience design is listening and giving customers what they need. It's about interpreting what you hear. And if someone says make it red, it's about understanding that it's not about making it red. It's understanding the thing that they want to make red is a pain point. It's a problem for them. And we need to identify those pain points and figure out really what's the best solution. And maybe it's not making it red. Maybe it's making it bigger. Or maybe it's removing it completely because it doesn't actually need to be there. UX is not about giving people what they want. And I think all too often I've talked to executives who say, well, we've talked to customers and they want this and that's not going to work. It's not that. It's not about focus groups and aspirations. It's not a task or a phase. I can't wave my magic wand and be like, UXimus Maximus, and it's fixed. I wish I could. I'd be paid a lot of money. It doesn't work that way. It's not expert design. I know a lot of amazing designers who can make things look very good, far better than I can, right? But if you're not talking to users, if you're not understanding users' behaviors, needs, and goals, it's not UX. And it's not usability. We're not just talking about the bottom of the pyramid. We're talking about the top. So UX is research-based, generative research and evaluative research. We want to generate an understanding. We want to evaluate our solutions. It's analytical and probing. It's constantly asking why. It's a process. It's not just waving your magic wand. And it's cross-departmental. There is no such thing as a UX of one. If your organization is not invested in this process, you're going to struggle. UX is about behaviors, needs, and goals. Right? It's not about attitudes. I like is not as helpful as I do. I want is not as helpful as I need. I wish is not as helpful as I need to accomplish. And oftentimes when you're talking with a user, they're not really great at vocalizing these thoughts. We're really good about talking about how we feel at the moment. We're not really good about talking about behavior. We're not, as humans, we're not really good about talking about the things that we struggle with or the thing we're trying to achieve. As researchers, right, as designers, we need to help work with users to listen and listen between the lines to understand how we can help them. So that was easy, right? I mean, rocket science, right? Let's just talk to people and figure out what they need and give it to them. Like, why is that so hard? Why are there still so many terrible experiences? And, I'd love if you're in the chat to throw in some ideas around why you think there are so many terrible experiences. I have a few thoughts, right? I think there are misconceptions that research is too expensive or too time consuming. We can't do it. We don't have the time right now. We'll do it later. We need something now, right? It'll be fine. Good, design. It's just making it pretty. Like how much impact does that have? We have a bunch of developers. We can build something. We've already talked to users. We understand. We talked to them last year. I'm a user, right? I use the tool. I know what we need to do. Oh, we're still working. We're not ready, right? When we have the final thing, then we'll test it. I think all of those things are misconceptions and they cause problems, right? And one of the things is that you get to the end and you've built something and you realize it doesn't work or it doesn't meet the needs, right? And it's really hard to go back and fix something once it's built. It's much easier to fix something when it's still pencil on paper. I want to give a shout out to Emily Danielson. I found this online, her talk. So I recommend you go and have a look. And one of the things it talks about is the different type of objections different types of stakeholders may have, and then how you can talk to those different type of stakeholders about those objections. And I'm not going to go into it, but I really found it useful. So if you want to grab a screenshot of this or you know, look this up and you can find it. I'm still looking for her actual talk. I just found the deck, but the deck I found really helpful. So we're talking about getting buy-in, right? And I want to talk about who owns the user experience. I want to talk about how UX is an organizational initiative and why that's really key to being successful. And I think this quote does a good job. It is so much more than designing for a screen. User experience is impacted by decisions made across an organization, from the boardroom to the way a developer codes for performance. If your finance team or CFO is not on board with giving you the tools you need to be successful, right, you're going to fail. If your project manager is not on board with the amount of time it takes to do research and the types of outputs you need to have, you're going to fail. If your development team is not engaged in the research process and understanding what you're trying to achieve, you're going to fail. If your designers are not going out and part of the research process and not talking to users to really understand the behaviors, needs, and goals, you're going to fail. If your executive team doesn't understand why this is so important and willing to spend the time or the money to make sure that you have a design or you have time for research, you're going to fail. I think the more you own the user experience, right, and believe that this process is going to make you successful, and the more you drive that as an organization, the more you're going to be successful. If you hire, like, let's go out and hire a UX designer and you isolate them and just say, let us know when you're done, right? You're not going to be successful. And you're probably not going to hold on to your designer for very long. So let's tell a joke. Did you hear that the two antennas got married? Yeah, the wedding was meh, but the reception was amazing. Yeah, you're all laughing. I know you can't hear. Everyone's laughing. Let's talk about the UX design process. I think what's best is that I laugh at these, and I've told them 100 times. So the UX design process, this is the way it was, right? Design something, does the client like it? Yes, okay, woohoo, we're done. No, let's revise, right? And that doesn't fly anymore. This is another version of it, right? There are so many different versions of these bubbles and line charts and things, and they're all roughly the same. You empathize, you talk with people, you create some definition and alignment, you think of different ways to solve the problem, you prototype and test those, and then you iterate on those, and maybe, right, in an agile methodology, you push them forward. I like this example, right? It talks about the product design process. This is from the UK Design Council, put together. It's called the Double Diamond. And it's broken up into 2 diamonds, obviously, but 4 sections: discover, define, develop, and deliver. I think if you're going to take something away from this, and I'm going to walk through it in more detail, the 2 keys are, well, the first diamond is, are we designing, are we building the right thing? The second diamond is, are we building that thing right? So in the first diamond, it's the problem space. We've recognized something is wrong. We want to improve something. Let's figure out what it is. It's the problem space. This is where we identify and test ideas. Our goal is to come out of this with alignment, with a strategy that our organization agrees on, that we understand the problems and we understand how we want to solve these problems. This is where great user experiences come from. So discovery can be things like desk research. So a literature review, looking at existing research, doing domain research, talking with stakeholders, workshops, interviews, and of course, talking with users. Interviews, surveys, ideally observational research, going and watching, seeing how they actually use the tool, or how they exist in the space that you want to insert your tool. Life in the time of COVID has impacted that, unfortunately, right? And you can't just go and talk to someone in a cafe. We can't go to someone's office and observe them using the tool. So we rely now much more on digital tools, which is fine, right? And so there's a little less granularity, but it's still so important. The things that you understand and you capture just from watching someone use your tool are amazing. And you don't get that. You don't get that granularity, the juicy bits from a survey. So we've gone out and we've diverged, right? That first part of the diamond, and we found all these great things. And then we come back together as an organization and we talk about who in our audience are we really going to be able to help? What are the really clear outcomes we're going to be able to have that we think are going to be the most useful? What are our risks? What are our assumptions? What are the things we still don't know? What methods can we use to define success? What are our hypotheses? And there's a great quote that a friend of mine, Lise Maitland, talks about, a Japanese proverb: vision without action is the daydream, right? And so we're creating a vision in this first diamond. Action without vision is a nightmare. So if we just jump to this second diamond without creating this vision, we're going to be lost and we're going to have problems. But if we just create this vision and we don't build anything from it, all we have is daydreams. So the second part of the diamond is the solution space. We are going to design things right because we know the right thing to design now. So this is where we generate and test solutions. Our goal is to work through different design options, work through those trade-offs, and deliver the best one. This is where great usability comes from. So how do we do that? We do design, we sketch, we prototype, we test. We think about information architecture, we do prototyping, card sorting, tree testing. We collaborate across our organization. We do desk research again, look at comparative analyses to find out what are the standards in our industry and maybe where are the gaps, where are things that people are not doing well. And once we do that, we deliver, right? We come together towards a final solution that we test and iterate. We consolidate our design rationales, we document the experience. In each one of these steps, we're talking potentially with customers, and maybe you choose to talk with customers in only one. And if you do, start earlier in the process. If you have the luxury of talking with users at every step, do it, right? There is value. That's the rough design process. Again, if you're going to take anything from this, you can find it online, but find out what is the right thing to design and then find out how to design it right. So, okay, we're doing this process, right? And we're talking to customers and we're going ahead and we're creating things and we're feeling good, but how do we know if we're doing it right? How do we know if we're being successful? And we have to measure, because I can go through this process and I can still be wrong, right? And I love being wrong. I mean, I prefer being wrong at the beginning, but if we learn that we're wrong, it means we're testing. And I know I've been wrong in some things. If I don't see that I'm wrong, it means I'm missing it, right? And until I can measure and see success, we're flying blind. So when thinking about measuring, did you choose how to measure success before you designed, before you started? I've definitely worked with organizations that we've created something and they've said, you know what, here's how we're going to measure success, because after we've implemented this metric is really good, right? It's a little cheating. Did you decide before you started what are the things you're going to target? Right? Like some things that we're targeting, for example, are we're trying to reduce support tickets in some of our initiatives. We're trying to increase engagement in some of our initiatives. We're trying to increase people using a specific feature with some of our initiatives. But best that we decide that ahead of time so our designers can really focus on the right thing. Did you benchmark the current state? So not only do we know what we're going to test at the end, but do you know the delta? Do you know that we've improved by 10% or 100%? That data is important. Is your measurement strategy based on user outcomes, right? Are you measuring based on users as opposed to just business objectives? Your user outcomes should level up to and ladder up to a business objective. But it shouldn't just be a business objective by which you're measuring success for the user experience. So let's talk about KPIs. It is a measurable value that demonstrates how effectively a company is achieving its key business objectives. How do you choose an effective KPI? Right? For user experience KPI, again, you need to understand what your user is trying to achieve. If your KPI is increased page views, but a user really wants to be in and out really quickly because they need to solve a problem, there's a misalignment, right? You also want to engage your entire organization in helping you define these, because again, you're not an island, right? It's not a UX team of one, it's a UX team as an organization. And leverage their knowledge to help you really understand what users are trying to achieve and what are going to be the most impactful things to measure to help drive business objectives. The other thing you want to think about for KPIs is that they're going to be able to drive action. So a KPI is only as valuable as the action it inspires. There are some metrics that are interesting, but you don't necessarily know what to do with. So unique users, I have a count of unique users that's going down. Cool, right? Useful, maybe, but can I design something based on that? Like, what do I do then? We need more information. Can I have a KPI that actually drives specific action that I can understand and drive more clear benefit? Sorry, I'm getting hung up on words here. Can we create KPIs that really drive clear action? And I have a couple that I'm going to show you in a second. What we want to avoid, right? Organizations will say, oh, all of these other organizations are adopting like these industry-wide KPIs. But you're unique, right? And often what you'll find is that you'll have KPIs that everyone else is using, and maybe you can measure yourself across your industry, but it doesn't really impact change, right? It doesn't tell you much about the experience users are having. The signals can be ambiguous. What we want to talk about, right, for the UX KPI are behavioral based. We want to make sure it ladders up to business objectives. We want to make sure they're easy to measure. You don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours trying to collect this every time. And you want to make sure it measures actual user outcomes. So examples, right? Shopping cart abandonment. Shopping cart value, not so great. It's just a number, right? What do I do if someone has like, $200 versus $100, but people are abandoning the shopping cart, right? That's something we can act on. Time on task, task success rate, search versus navigation, form validation error rate. That's a really great one, right? So not just people clicking submit or abandoning a form, but how many errors are you generating on your form? I think that's a really clear example of a behavioral KPI where you can see users are struggling on potentially a really critical task for your business. Things that are not UX KPIs, load time, time on page, geographic location, basket value, profit margin, demographics. These things are potentially interesting for targeting, right, for marketing, but they don't really drive behavior. And I don't know how to solve a design problem based on profit margin, right? If our CEO says emails are bouncing, right, I don't know how to solve that. So when you're thinking about UX KPIs, behavior-based, they should ladder up to business objectives, but not necessarily be business objectives. They should be easy to measure, and they should measure real user outcomes. Okay, I'll tell you another joke. I have like 4 pages here, you should know. Why can't you make a pencil with 2 erasers? It would be pointless. Yeah. I'm telling you, you're all laughing. You're all laughing. So much better when I'm here alone and no one can tell me to stop telling the jokes. Let's talk about outcomes. So what's the point? We go through this process. We talked about what UX is and isn't. We talked about one version of that process and how we get to this point. But what are we actually trying to achieve? So the first thing is a common understanding of people and their needs. So I think we've talked a lot about understanding people and their needs, right? Behaviors, needs, and goals. We want to understand who are the users of our service, right? Of the hospital, of the museum, who are the users of the watch or the phone, who are the users of the kiosk at the gas station. But the key here is also a common understanding. Unless you are a business of one person, right? You are an organization. And if I am designing something and my executive team, my developers, my product team, my project management team, our finance team aren't aligned and doesn't understand what we're trying to achieve, we're going to be at loggerheads and we're going to have problems. We're going to have, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? No, we're not going to do this. We're going to get into development and then make changes, or it's going to be developed so it doesn't actually work the way we want it to. So it's not just understanding, but it's the common understanding across your organization for you to be successful. Once you have a common understanding of people and their needs, you should have that organizational alignment on a vision, right? And not just the final, not just kind of the first steps you want to take, because maybe you need to take a baby step towards that final version. But you're all agreed on, here is like the Holy Land, right? Here's the thing we want to get to. And we are aligned on how to get that. And our customer success team is going to take steps as part of their service to provide that. And our support team is going to make changes, so they're going to enable that. And our design team and our product delivery team is going to work towards that. So we all as an organization are aligned on, here's the thing we're going to do. Because as an organization, it's not just going to be the designs, right? It's not just going to be the thing the development team creates that is going to get us towards that vision. We are going to detail the definition of an experience that can be implemented. So we're going to document it so everyone can have it. And we are going to deliver, right? So we've documented, we built it, we're going to deliver a useful, usable, and desirable experience. So we're going to focus on useful, usable, desirable, not just the bottom. We want those table stakes, but we also want to have meaningful, right? We also want to have convenient. We also want to have pleasurable. And we want to create the infrastructure so that the experience can be measured for continuous improvement. Don't forget to measure. And don't just think about measuring once you're at the end. You know, I think we have a challenge at our organization, and we're slowly changing this, right? Part of the thing that my team is doing is building a measurement strategy into the beginning of the process or the end, right? But engineering takes time, right? Development takes time, and we have a lot of things in product. When I first started my organization, we would build something. And then, you know, maybe a couple of months later, we would build in we use Mixpanel for tracking and analytics tool. And then, right, it took like a few months to get any understanding, right, enough data to really look at how users are using that. So it took 6 months sometimes to see this new feature, is it being used? What I really want to see after, right, week 1, how many people used it in the first week? And after 2 weeks, how is it being used? Where are people getting hung up? I want to be talking to users, right? Measurement is not just analytics. It's not just Google Analytics. It's having a beta program so you can capture immediate feedback. It's setting up, talking with customer success team and asking them to capture immediate feedback from their regular calls, looking at the support tickets coming in, right? Having some measure of how many of those are related to this new feature, right? Don't just think of measurement as Google Analytics or your analytics tool, but you should be measuring that. You should want to have that data as soon as it's launched. To do that, you need to be thinking about how do you capture those analytics before the thing is built, right? And make sure that's part of your strategy. Prepping your customer success team and your support team, building the tracking stories and putting them into Jira, whatever your ticket tracking thing is. So that's the outcomes, right? And hopefully you're seeing, right? None of this is rocket science. Some of the things are harder than others. I think the problem is that it's a behavioral thing in your organization. It's a habit you need to form. You need to be able to drive your organization to understand the value of taking each of these steps and making it a habit. So you go through each of these things and you're able to recognize the value. And once you do it a couple of times, and maybe you're not going to do this whole thing at once, right? Changing a culture is hard, right? I'm still working on it, and right, it's been 2 years because some things come easier than others. Bring people along for the ride and they'll have an aha moment about, oh yeah, that really makes sense. I see the value of this, and keep building the habit in your organization. Don't be an island of one. So what you get to, right? The outcome for you and your organization is you save money by going through this process. Fewer mistakes, fewer getting to the end and realizing we've built the wrong thing, or it doesn't work the way we want, or customers are not really engaging, right? It doesn't solve their problems. That saves you money. That saves you time. And it also creates better products, right? And by creating better products, you have greater loyalty and you have happier customers. I'm a big fan of keeping customers. I'm a big fan of having satisfied customers as opposed to having to go out and find new customers every time. So that's UX. I wanted to share some resources with you. This is a list of UX tools created. I did not create this, but it's an amazing list on a tool called Airtable. If you go to that, you'll find them. They're organized by everything you can imagine. Like I said, I have nothing to do with it. I just think it's a great resource. I also have a list of books for folks looking to read to get into UX. So this is curated on Amazon. It's a book list. Like, I don't get any money or anything, but it's there for you if you have some thoughts. So please have a look at those. And yeah, so I'm gonna shut up there. Wow, that went really quick. I talked fast. So I'm gonna shut up, and if you have asked any questions or if you haven't, jump into the Q&A. Jana, I guess you've been looking at the questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, thanks, Ari. That was really great. That gets me really excited about UX even more so. So there are a few questions, and there's some great conversation going on in the chat too, some really good comments that I'm seeing. But one of the questions that I see from Josh Q is that it seems just about all companies will give some way into UX design, but also will try to slip by some of these very important research, measurement, and reevaluation steps. Any suggestion for convincing coworkers and higher ups that those steps are key part of the process?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you talk with, I'd imagine any executive would say, yes, understanding our users is very important, and then decide, look, we don't have time right now. If you're lucky, sometimes you just need to ask and say, look, I'd love for us to be able to try this, and as long as you can do it enough ahead of time, some leaders may be willing. I think the other thing you may just need to do is sneak it in, right? And find time for you to talk with some users, to launch a survey, and bring the outcomes, right? Show the best thing to create change is to show when you were wrong, right? And ideally show literally how you were wrong. Like, I loved when I was a consultant, to show the value of the process was I would take my designs, we would test them, and I would say, look, like, here are like 3 things that we got wrong. And obviously they'd be smaller things because I didn't want to completely devalue, the work, but really my value was in the process and being able to do that research that they couldn't. So if you're able to just find some time, find a way to sneak it in, and it doesn't have to be big and formal. Find a way to talk to customers, show them designs, talk about the concept of the thing you're about to build and get feedback, and then be like casually, oh yeah, I talked to some customers. Here's what I found. Here's how we really should think about this thing, or here's the things that we found wrong. And man, if we had built this, I talked to the engineers, this would have been 2 months of engineering time, rough calculation. That would have been what, $80,000 we would have wasted. Whew. I think for leadership, you need to talk in dollars. You need to talk about business, the impact of the business in terms of new customers, right? How do you increase revenue? Or decrease cost. So I think if you can find out a way of going out and doing research and sort of ballparking the impact that you've had, that's speaking their language. And sometimes you can't go straight to the executive. Maybe your boss is a manager or director, and you need to work with them, and then help enable them to talk to the people above them. Good question.
Right. And also I wanted to say something about that. One thing that's worked for me in the past is if you record client conversations and video, of course, get their permission, but sometimes it's more powerful to show those recordings of clients actually saying, this doesn't work, or, it's more powerful to hear it from the people using it than, as a user experience person telling the executives. So sometimes, that can work and get them excited for future research.
Absolutely.
All right, great question. Yeah. All right, so let's go to the next one. John Melansky, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Thoughts on research repositories, the old problem of a place where non-experts can find answers in the work we've done.
Oh boy, good question. I think it is an invaluable tool to have a centralized place where all of your customer contacts exist so you can go and reference them. We have one at Crownpeak that we are semi-successful with. I think, so Jan and I work together. Jan is on my team. So we have a tool where we put all of our customer interactions, and it's a really valuable tool for us to go in and look back as we're starting new projects to see, when did someone talk about this thing? I have integrations that have our survey feedback going in there. I have our win-loss data going in there. So I'm trying to pull in data from lots of different channels, and I find it valuable. Selling that value to the rest of the organization and getting the rest of the organization engaged in that has been more of a challenge. Some on our product team use it, right, and engage and see the value. Some, I think, see the value, but don't have the time to go in. Our customer success team talks with customers frequently, but they also have to document things in Salesforce. And so it's a challenge to have them documenting things in both places. In reality, like, we need to create a good experience for them to be able to engage with us. And a good experience for them is not forcing them to document things twice. So I see the value, and to be honest, I'm still struggling with figuring out how do we get the whole organization involved in this one tool. Their integrations are really great, and that has really been very helpful for me. So if someone like I need to work on that, pulling data, the right data out of Salesforce, because I don't want to pull out like pricing conversations. I just want to pull product conversations in to our repository. So I need to figure out how to do that. So I think that the best way is if the organization, smaller organizations, a little easier, larger organizations, if you can integrate with the tools where people are and pull that data into your repository, it makes it a lot easier. And then just show value, right? Like, if you can pull that data out and create a report, look over the past year, this new project we're creating, I have 5 customer conversations, there's 3 pieces of feedback from the NPS, and from our chatbot, we have this, and you can triangulate, look at all this great data that suggests this is going to be a stupid idea. That's really valuable. Hopefully that sort of answers the question. How many questions were there about jokes?
No questions about jokes. Sorry, sharing my video so you have a face. Okay, no jokes, but we had a lot of laughs, and people love your jokes, as usual.
Can I tell another one? All right, sure.
Of course.
What do you call a lazy doctor? Dr. Doolittle. Yep, everyone's laughing. Everyone's laughing. All right.
I'm laughing inside.
Back to UX.
All right, by Rachel Childs, how do you merge accessibility and UX design effectively?
I guess I don't see them as different. Good user experience requires accessibility. The general principles of usability and accessibility are, for the most part, are the same. You need to be thinking about it. I think part of discussing UX as an organizational initiative is important, because accessibility is not just how it's designed, there's a lot about how it's developed. So talking about accessibility with your engineering team, making sure they're trained on how to develop accessible content, accessible features, and how you work with them to make sure that if the thing you design maybe can't be built right based on the platform, the framework, the language they're building in, maybe there's a struggle having those conversations about what outcomes you want to have. Because it's the outcome that's the most important, not that specific design. So short story, as an organizational initiative, accessibility is part of good design. And if people don't think so, then you should tell them it is. But again, I mean, talking about, if you're talking with leadership, it comes down to what they care about, right? They care about increasing revenue or decreasing costs. So for accessibility, better usability, you create greater customer satisfaction. And there's certainly reports out on the web which speak to that. And you can bring that data to show by increasing usability, industry reports suggest that we increase satisfaction by X amount. Also, people are getting their asses sued because they're not accessible, and that's going to cost you, a couple $100 million. By the way, we have a tool that helps manage accessibility if anyone is interested. My boss made me say that. He didn't, but we have a tool. Anyway, go on. Next question.
All right, next question. This is by Ailey. How do you work user testing into an agile environment? My client is always telling me that they don't have time or they can't schedule user testing. How do I make them see the value, and how do I work it into agile?
Sure. I'm going to say something contentious, but I don't think UX should run on the same agile sprint as the engineering team. If you are constantly scrambling to have a design done in 2 weeks, then you're constantly scrambling to have a design done in 2 weeks. I think UX needs time to think and breathe. I mean, Jan and I have worked on projects. There was one recently where we went through discovery, we went through design, and we decided, this is not a good idea, right? And what we didn't want was the engineering team to be saying, well, what do we do now, right? The engineering team should have a long backlog of things to work on, and the UX team should be ideally a couple of months ahead of them, right? Working on research, designing new features, testing the designs. What we also do, right, and maybe let's say 85% of our time is there, we do spend 15% of our time working with the engineers on the things we've already designed and tested and helping resolve issues as part of their sprint, right? And answering questions, maybe something needs to be tweaked, small things, we forgot to create a button in this design, or we need this one additional screen to show the interaction. But if you're, as a designer, constantly scrambling to feed the engineering team, there's no way you're going to be able to do research, right? And it's not a surprise you're struggling. So I don't think we should be in that space.
All right, so next question is, what are UI and UX visual designer job responsibilities? And are you using Adobe XD or Sketch?
We are using Sketch. I've tried Adobe XD, it's fine. I know people are using Figma. All of those tools have pluses and minuses. For the most part, they all do the same things. I think we have a relatively small team. For larger organizations that really have kind of, a research team and a UX team and a UI team, and maybe even like a prototyping team, you might actually have different tools where you could spend time on animation or really, some tools are slightly better for visual design than others. I think designers have a preference. I don't know if one tool is necessarily the best. So Jenna, was the question, what is a UX designer and what is a UI designer, or what is, if they're together, what is?
Yes, the question is, what are UI-UX visual designer job responsibilities?
Man, they're so varied depending on the organization. I see some UI UX designers that they require you to know HTML. It's kind of BS, but some require research. Every organization, right? Every leader has a different definition of what they're looking for in UI and UX. I know mine is, different than a lot of my, well, not different, but I think I look for different things than some of my peers. So it's hard to talk about, but I think in general, the double diamond, right? Each of those four, right? The four parts of the two diamonds and kind of the halves of each diamond, someone who's able to look into a problem and understand it, someone who's able to create alignment and define based on what they learned, what our vision should be, someone who's able to generate potential solutions and then effectively narrow in on those solutions.
All right, I have another question from Anonymous.
All right.
Tell us about your transition from an individual UX contributor to UX management.
Yeah. I think, interesting question. So I think maybe, I don't want to say I was lucky, but I think I had a lot of opportunity to manage the process as a consultant. So before I was managing other designers, I was managing clients, customers. So I had to really be able to effectively communicate my goals as a designer, what I was going to be able to do, what I wanted to do, how the process I was going to do it, how I was going to engage with each stakeholder. So I spent a lot of time building those communication skills and the ability to kind of think about a process and how I needed, what each stakeholder needed, how I needed to work with them. And I think then slowly as we evolved, right, we had bigger projects and I would work with other designers and then have designers under me. So I think having that experience of thinking about how to solve problems for customers really helped as I evolved into leading a team. The skills are roughly the same. Obviously, as a manager, you have more, certainly a lot more responsibility for the growth of the people under you. That took some time just being in that role.
All right, one other question, Logan Bishop. Throughout the UX research phase, how do you ensure the client is well informed as to where you are in the design process? Is it reports, presentation, weekly stand-ups?
I mean, ideally, they're part of it, right? The best clients I've had have sat in on every research session, right? Have then sat when we do like, we're all in a workshop room together and we do analysis. When we start sketching, we do that together. Right, and then we sketch together, the designer goes and comes back with some lower fidelity things, and we work together through it. And then we test it together and they're involved. I mean, some clients we've actually prepped because they wanted to learn more about UX, and we actually had them, it was adorable, but we had them lead a couple of testing sessions. That's best case, right? They are engaged because they care and they want to be involved. If you have someone who doesn't want to be involved and you're just kind of presenting at the end, there's a huge risk that you do that. And there's like, what is this? That's not what we were thinking. Or what about, like, the worst is what about this? What about this at the final presentation, right? That's not what you want. So yeah, I mean, weekly check-ins are great. Involvement in design activities is great. As much as you can, and they're willing to be involved, do that, right? Teach them about the process. Have them be your evangelists, right? So they can talk with their peers about how amazing is this UX process? Why don't you guys try it too? Maybe one more quick one or a joke?
I think that was it. So I think it's time for another joke.
All right. Why do penguins hop on a first date? They're trying to break the ice.
That's a good one. Yeah, a few people in the comments are saying joke.
All right, one last one. What did the cannibal get when he was late to the dinner party? The cold shoulder. Huh? All right.
Good one.
Ari out. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it. If you have any additional questions, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. Keep going to other Startup Week sessions. I found a bunch of amazing ones. I have another talk on Thursday morning about how to test designs and ideas with a colleague of mine, a former colleague of mine, Lisa Maitland. So if you're curious about testing specifically, come join us. Other than that, back to you, Startup Week folks.